up, you guys, and welcome back to the Televised Podcast. My name is Anna, and today we're going to be talking about Supergirl Season 6, Episode 12, titled Blind Spots. This episode was co-written by Azie Tesfaye, who plays Kelly Olsen. She is actually the first actor ever in a Berlanti production to write an episode, which is so crazy. It's so insane. I'm so happy for her. The episode was incredible. I loved it so much. And I talked about last week how I was so excited specifically to see, obviously, Kelly through Azie's voice, like through her lens, the way that she wrote Kelly. I was really excited to see. But also, I was really excited to see how she would write the other characters. And I think she just handled them with such care that you can tell that she cares so much about each of these characters. She is invested and she knows her stuff. Like, she knows her facts, because there's a lot of, callbacks in this episode, which I think is really wonderful. It's a lot of, not necessarily, Easter eggs, but it's just, dropping these lore moments that fans will know if they've seen, season 3, they'll know this, so, and I love that, because I feel like sometimes the show kind of loses that in a weird way, but Azie was really able to bring that in with this episode. She co-wrote it with Jay Holtham, who has been a staff writer on Supergirl for a while. And I loved it so much. So huge congratulations to Azie for such an incredible episode. I'm going to be spending, the entire time that I'm talking about it just gushing about how good it was and how much I loved it and just how important it was. And we're definitely going to talk about that as well. So let's just get into it. So we open the episode with Nixley holding the crystal, and she's trying to get the location of the totem, and then we actually end up flashing back to 24 hours earlier, and just like we were kind of talking about last week, for a little bit of this episode, mainly just the beginning, it actually is concurrent running with last week's episode, so that actually did end up happening. So as Kelly exits this Ethiopian restaurant, which is actually a little Easter egg, Azie named the Ethiopian restaurant after her mother. She gets a call from Joey, who tells her that he's going to show a friend their new place, but then the building comes down and Kelly watches as this building collapses, and she hears him scream on the phone, and she runs to go save him. And so she ends up meeting up with Orlando, who's there as well, and Orlando tells her that an ambulance will not get to the Heights in time to help these people. So Kelly takes them to the hospital herself. She takes Joey, Orlando, and Joey's friend, who actually was involved as well in the building collapse. She was injured as well, is what I'm trying to say. So when they get to the actual Heights hospital, the hospital that's the only hospital, I guess, in the area, it's already overwhelmed, and Kelly talks to a nurse, and she realizes that they don't have enough oxygen, they don't have enough respirators, they don't have enough beds. There's just so much happening, and obviously this is kind of, it's reckoning back to today, what we're dealing with today, which is always so fun to be reminded of. But then the councilwoman comes in, the same councilwoman, Councilwoman Rankin, who we talked about in the previous 2 episodes, I think, or at least the ones with Orlando. I can't remember. Was it 610 and 611 that she was in? I don't remember. Anyway, but she's back. And she says that she's gonna help, and she's like, oh my god, why did you take me here? And clearly she thinks that this is a lower hospital, a hospital that she doesn't want to be in, and so she leaves to, quote, clear up a bed for the good people of this community. No, lady, F you. You're going to a nice cushy hospital where they can give you what you want, and you're just gonna leave these people here to suffer. Kelly then calls Alex, and it's actually the call from the last episode, and Alex says that she will contact her friends from med school, see if they can send respirators, but they're really busy dealing with something huge, and she doesn't even specify, but she just says, look, we're booked and busy, Kelly. I'm sorry, but I'll make sure I get you respirators. So at the quote-unquote nicer hospital, the councilwoman Rankin requests a drug called RP90, which is experimental and meant to help respiratory issues. Again, this, calls back to today. And she tells the nurse, who's kind of like hesitant. He's like, dude, this is like super experimental and we don't know how it even works. And she tells him that if they want the healthcare grants approved by city council, she'll get the medicine. And then we actually see fifth dimensional energy like flash in her body, which we'll get to and talk about more later. So at the Heights Hospital, Joey's also showing signs of fifth dimensional energy, and Kelly watches very disappointedly as they show Supergirl's fight with a cat on the TV in the lobby. And the quote from the news television says, "It's the only news anyone can talk about," which obviously is making commentary about how issues in communities like the Heights don't get covered nearly as much as like issues that aren't maybe necessarily as important happening in other areas of the city. They always take second place to those other stories, and that is clearly what's being shown here. Supergirl fighting a giant cat, second-rate, story, or the second-rate story to that is unfortunately an entire building coming down and damaging this community very deeply. But that is, of course, the commentary that the show is making, saying like, this is wrong. So Kelly ends up actually calling James at the hospital. She gets his voicemail, but she says she kind of like is venting into his voicemail box, telling him that she's exhausted and knew he would be the only one to understand. And while Kelly is speaking to James, we actually see the councilwoman take the shot, and she gains the power to drain people of their life force using the fifth dimensional energy. She's able to drain the people who had inhaled the like fifth dimensional energy particles from the building and heal herself. And we watch as like her guard kind of like drops like a sack of potatoes in the background. And this moment, specifically for Kelly when she's leaving that voicemail to James, is just one like highlight moment for me of this episode, because she just like talks very like candidly and real about how isolated she feels, specifically from like the Superfriends, how they're too busy to help her, and how she just feels so exhausted having to do all of this, what it feels like on her own. And it's such a highlight moment for not only just Kelly as a character and the writing, but also Azie as an actress, who does such a wonderful job in this entire episode, but specifically in that moment and then a couple other moments later. So then we actually end up flashing real quick, just real quick. We go to Newfoundland, where Lena is training with Florence. I always say Newfoundland. Anyway, we go to where Lena is, and she's training with Florence, and she actually lights Florence's arm on fire, like, oh, shit. She actually gets a text from Kelly and a news alert from Catco, which is ultimately the one that she opens, and she rushes to get home. Obviously, another kind of commentary about how, she instinctively opened the news article about the Superfriends rather than the text from Kelly. Just that little moment from Lena, in Newfoundland. So at the tower, the Superfriends are trying to figure out how to find Nixley or even Mixie. Alex and Kara rush off to the DEO desert facility, which, if you'll recall, is the one from season 1. So this is another one of those little, like, you remember? Like, little moments, like, for the audience, which are just so satisfying to hear implemented into the show. And I'm so happy Azie did that. But before they leave, Alex says that she was actually going to go check on Kelly, but she decides, she's probably fine. She's fine. She's so strong. She's fine. Alex, oh my God. So at Alex and Kelly's place, Kelly gives Andrea a call to question why she's covering traffic, of all things, when there are people suffering in the Heights, and she straight up tells her that the Heights is just not newsworthy. This is like, this is the most villainous we have ever seen Andrea. Like, I watched her try to kill Supergirl, and this is like the most villainous moment she has ever had. Like, how heartless could you be, you bitch? It's like, oh my god. Anyway, I can't believe she just said that to Kelly, like on the phone with her, like not necessarily to her face, but oh my god. Anyway, and then of course, a very not surprising entrance, but John Diggle shows up right at her door. And I love that. I obviously, I'm an Arrow fan. I loved John Diggle on Arrow, and I really liked his appearance on Batwoman earlier this year. And so I was just dying to see him show up on Supergirl, and he did not disappoint in this episode. I loved it. So he basically tells her that James sent him and that he thought she would listen to Dig more than she would James. Kelly says she's fine. She just wants to focus on getting the people in the Heights the help that they need. Obviously, she's like really burying her feelings in this moment, trying to like focus on the people. And Dig kind of like sees through that, and he says to her that sometimes soldiers, because they both served, soldiers get too caught up and they ignore how they actually are feeling. And he tells her that he's there for her anyway if she needs it. Kelly tells him that she thinks something beyond just like dust and inhalation is causing the people to get sick, so then they head off to the scene of the crime. And also there was another moment in this kind of sequence where he's talking about Oliver Queen, and again, it's just really nice to like hear all these little moments be brought up. Obviously, like, it's connected, but it feels like sometimes they kind of skip over those little like minute connections that we all, would talk about. Like, he says that he knew James because they like worked with the same like powerful people, and I just love those moments. So at the Ormfell, Kelly and Dig find the fifth dimensional energy, but first the councilwoman does an evil woman speech about how she's like, look, there's no more Ormfell. That means we don't have to put in affordable housing. And then she says she is hungry and she would kill for a sandwich. And guess what? She does. Well, I don't know if she killed that guy, but the guy next to her, like, fully drops unconscious and a sandwich appears in her hands. And it's like, holy shit. And she obviously realizes that whatever her heart's desire she can have, obviously at a human cost, but she is not concerned about that, just as she wasn't concerned about it before in the more like metaphorical sense of the word when Kara was talking about it in the previous episodes. So at the tower, Kara and Alex bring back a box of Naltorian scanners, which is really cool. Again, here we have like a little thing about it's connected to Nia, like that's nice. And they're each in Dreamer's like signature colors. They're in the blue and the gray and the white, and they just look really cool. And they find that there's actually still fifth dimensional energy coming from the Ormfell. So the Superfriends show up, and Kara says, I'm not letting her get away this time. But then they bust in the door, and it's Kelly and Dig, and they're in there because they're looking for the source of all of this, they don't know that it's necessarily fifth dimensional energy, but they're looking for the cause. And so they meet up in this moment, and they fill them in on Nixley. And Brainy says that removing the debris should give them the energy they need to track Mixie, and also, help the people in the Heights. Again, I mean, the interesting thing about this episode, and something that I really appreciated and kind of like loved that Azie like really made a point to show in this episode, is that none of the Super Friends are behaving the way that they are out of malice. Like, everybody wants to believe that the kind of racism or injustices or whatever that we all have to be fighting on the daily come from, or like only comes from, like evil racist people who are out to get, any minority that they can get their hands on. But the thing is that a lot of the time, injustices and oppression are perpetuated by people who think that they mean well, or maybe people who mean well in general, but they just are too blind to their own privilege, or too blind to their own biases, or too blind to how their actions affect other people, and that's what she's kind of showing through the Superfriends. She's not saying, look, these people are evil and racist because, whatever, because they're not doing it out of malice, and that's kind of, it's like white indifference, like from these characters, except for Jean. But obviously he's kind of like not doing a great job either, but he's, anyway. It is almost kind of like the white indifference that is doing the worst damage, because it's people that think that they're allies, people that think that they're helping, people that think that they are making a difference, but they're not, or they're not listening to the Black people around them, or they're, it's that kind of like almost performative activism, kind of like, that's what this episode felt like. It felt like a hot take on people who are performative and people who refuse to examine themselves before becoming these like activists. You know what I mean? And I really appreciated that, because it's a really important message to spread to the audience, to say, hey, examine your own internal biases, or examine your own life and how you treat people and how you think about things, or like if you're listening to your Black friends when they say whatever, and I really appreciated that, and I thought it worked really well, and it worked so much better than if they had just done like a blatantly cartoonishly racist villain, you know what I mean? Because it's like, that's somebody that we can all hate, and it's not uncomfortable, and it's not, it is uncomfortable because obviously, whatever, but it's not like it's not a conversation that affects everybody, even the people who are well-meaning. You know what I mean? Like, this is a conversation that can, as we see later when Kelly has this conversation with Kara, that can be kind of an uncomfortable conversation to have. And I appreciate that Azie went in that direction with this episode, because it just felt so much more meaningful. So with the councilwoman, she is trying to shake out a new vote from her colleague, and she actually manifests that colleague's entire campaign funds into the palm of her hand. And we obviously, unfortunately, see her taking this energy directly from Joey, who should be getting better, but is only getting worse. So at the site, Kelly tells Supergirl that this community needs help, and Kara says that Nixley will pay for what she did. She also tells Kelly that when they get Mixie back, he can just snap his fingers and things will go back to the way that they were, and it'll just be fine. It'll be great. But before Kelly can say that the way things weren't exactly all that great, Kara flies off to deal with more contaminated debris. So Kelly actually ends up getting a call from Orlando that Joey is getting worse, and she makes to go to the hospital. And Alex and Kelly finally have this little bit of a talk, but Kelly says that they have to be missing something, and Alex just insists that now that they got all the debris, people should start getting better, but Kelly knows that it has to be more than that, and Alex just isn't. It's not that she doesn't care, and that's the thing. It's like she does care, but she thinks that they have the solution and they have the answer, and now they gotta go. But before they leave, Dreamer actually leaves the scanner, her Naltorian scanner, with Kelly, saying maybe they did miss something. And it's interesting, and I appreciate how Azie made Nia the most like sympathetic of the Superfriends. Not sympathetic, but like I guess sympathetic is the word, like the most understanding of Kelly's plight, because obviously as a trans woman, she's experienced a very similar vibe, I'm sure, from people who, again, are but who are presenting as well-meaning allies, but then they kind of like overlook you and they just think that they know what they're doing is best and whatever. And then they don't necessarily mean it out of malice, but again, it's not doing anybody any favors. And so I really appreciate that Nia kind of became that ally for Kelly, even though clearly she was still in the wrong in some ways and in the same ways that the rest of the Superfriends were. But I do appreciate that she had that edge of like sympathy, because she understands as a trans woman what that means. So at the hospital, Kelly and Dig see Joey and they end up speaking to Orlando. And while they're doing so, the scanner actually pings on the councilwoman out the window, who's actually in the middle of doing an interview outside the hospital. So Kelly notices how much better she is, how she's radiating this fifth dimensional energy, and Orlando steps in and interrupts Rankin, who is currently undermining the people in the community and talking about bootstraps, saying, oh, these people are weak, whatever, it's horrible. And one of her guards actually like steps up to like strike Orlando with like a baton. Like, where did he get that? And before that can happen, the coolest thing ever, Kelly jumps in with the Guardian shield, with the silver one, because we're not quite to the golden one yet. And it's great. So she saves him from being struck, which is wonderful. So Dig ends up fighting Rankin's goons while Kelly goes after Rankin herself. And they also kind of take a moment to like highlight how this helmet is like hard to see out of, and it's the silver one. And Rankin actually shows off her fifth dimensional energy powers by manifesting a hammer and attacking Kelly. She manages to get away, but not without a piece of her hair ending up in Kelly's grip, which is really funny to see, because it's like, can you imagine if someone was just like holding your hair and then you like bamf away or whatever, and then and then you just end up with like a really uneven cut? That's so unfortunate, but it's what she deserves. So at the tower, the Super Friends are scanning the debris for the fifth dimensional energy when Kelly and Dig walk in. And this is like probably one of the heaviest moments of the episode. So Kelly asks where they all were and says Rankin is the source of the issue, but she doesn't know how or why. And then she tells him that she says, you don't see me. And then Alex makes to say, she says, Kelly, I see you, but she gets cut off. And Kelly says that she knows they're going to stop Nixley, but they aren't listening to her, and she feels like she's screaming into the void. And she says, and everyone here is just too busy. And then she says, where is the outrage that people are going to die without help? And then she looks at Kara and she says, without hope. It's like, holy shit. Like, that was such a powerful moment from Kelly to like take Kara's mantra and just like throw it back in her face. And just say, look, you all aren't listening to me. You haven't been listening to me all day long. And I am sick of it. I'm done. I'm done pretending. I'm done being nice to you people. I'm done stepping on eggshells. I'm going to get what I want. And maybe I'm going to have to hurt your feelings because of it, because you deserve to see what you're doing. And I really I liked this moment a lot. Like, it was so powerful, and Azie acted her ass off in this moment. It was so heartbreaking to watch. Honestly, this whole episode was really like heartbreaking to watch. Like, it's not going to be an episode that I just like put on in the background for fun. Like, but that's what makes it so special and so important, is like it makes you want to watch every minute of it and be like, you know, just solely focused on what is happening on screen, because it's just so compelling and so heartbreaking. So after Kelly's speech, Alex and Kara try to like go after her, but Nia says that they should give her a second. And again, here's kind of Nia stepping into that more sympathetic role, which I really appreciate. So in the training room, Kelly is going crazy on the punching bag, and Dig approaches her and asks what's really going on. And it's funny because this scene is like, Dig is the therapist in this scene. And Kelly even talks about, she's like, listen, I'm a therapist. I pride myself on understanding my emotions and having them in check, and being, you know, 100% in tune with what is going on inside my head and inside my heart. But in this moment, Dig is kind of the one that's like being her therapist, you know, for just a moment. I really appreciated that. I love this moment. And they actually talk about her exhaustion and how she's just so tired, and she's so tired of fighting what is centuries of oppression and mistreatment. And she's just so tired. She's like, I can't fathom continuing. But Dig says that he's experienced the same thing that she has. He's experienced the generational trauma and everything that comes with it. And he says that she needs to use her exhaustion to fuel her fire. And he actually reveals that he gave up on being a lantern to be with Lydia and his kids, because he asked himself, what kind of hero do I really want to be? And then he actually ends up asking Kelly, what are you going to do with what you're feeling right now? And Kelly says that she wants to be a champion for those who are exhausted, so they don't have to fight every single day for themselves, which is so powerful, so wonderful. But also, can we talk about Dig just fully being like, nah, I don't want to be a Green Lantern. Obviously, that changes later in the episode, but I was really shocked in that moment. I was like, oh my god, they are retconning. I mean, because that was like the biggest moment in the Arrow finale. It was one of the biggest moments in the Arrow finale, and then they were like, actually, he just didn't want to do it. I mean, I understand why. Obviously, it's a very valid reason, but if they just left it at that, I would have been like, oh my god. So after this scene, Kara actually interrupts them, and Dig gives the two of them some space, and Kara apologizes to Kelly, and Kelly tells Kara that she's been pushing down this trauma brought up by the Heights, and that it exists and it's important. And Kara tries to explain, saying that she knew that Nixley would cause more trouble, but Kelly's like, yeah, she would cause more trouble tomorrow. Some don't have the luxury of focusing on tomorrow. Don't you see that? And I love this conversation between the two of them. And I love how it's been, this dynamic between the two of them has been built up so much, especially in these last couple of episodes, because it's like you can go from them joking with each other and Kelly setting up alerts for the veggies ad, and having this like really playful dynamic between the two of them. And then you can have these conversations where it's uncomfortable. And Azie even said in an interview that her and Melissa wanted to lean into how uncomfortable this conversation was because they knew how important it was. And so they can have this like dialogue between the two of them, and it feels so natural, and as natural as the two of them, joking with each other. And it's just such a cool thing to highlight, because that's what you have to do when you have friends who have different experiences from you, and you have family who have different experiences from you. It's so important to have these conversations. And Kara's like, I don't know how I missed this. And Kara brings up how she marched with the aliens while Agent Liberty was rising up. But Kelly points out, hey, Kara, you're also an alien. And she says that it's okay to be activated in a fight that's close to you, but it's okay to miss things, but it's different from you. That's different from your lived experience. But the key comes from hearing each other and making sure to have other people fill in those blind spots. Kara says that she feels guilty, but Kelly says that guilty feelings don't actually do anything because it's not an active emotion. So this is about how you change going forward. And again, I really appreciate how Azie again is like saying, look, they're not doing this out of malice. And just because you aren't doing something out of malice to be mean doesn't mean that you're not causing damage. You're not, being harmful with your actions or with your indifference. And I appreciate that. And I also love how she's like, look, it's okay that you are not as activated in this fight, but you have to listen to me and then get upset on my behalf and like uplift me in my fight and help me, and then I'll help you do the same. And it was just really wonderful. On the balcony, Alex and John have a heart-to-heart, and Alex says that she thought she was listening, that her and Kelly have so much in common, but John says that she'll most likely never understand exactly what Kelly's going through. He brings up how he is chosen to wear the face of a black man for a long time, and how wearing Hank's skin has made him feel most like an alien on Earth. And this is kind of a callback to season 3, which again was really wonderful. And he says that Kelly and James don't have the option to make that choice, to choose to be black, to choose to wear that skin color, and they don't, he chooses that every single day. He could have changed what form, what race he wanted to be, but he chose that, and James and Kelly don't have that option. So he tells Alex that he knows how much they love each other, and just to be there for her when she's ready to open up. So in the tower proper, Brainy analyzed Rankin's hair and finds the gene therapy that interacted with the fifth-dimensional energy and basically turned her into an energy siphon. So they decide to pull the energy out of Rankin by using a device and return it back to the people. The only catch is it'll absorb all the fifth-dimensional energy, but Kara says that the people in the Heights are the priority, and they need her to be within range of all the people. And Kelly says, let's go get her. So Kara leaves, but Kelly ends up staying behind with Brainy, and she says the helmet needs some work because she can't see. And also because she wants people to be able to see her skin color when she's out as Guardian. It's really important for her in terms of visibility, where young kids of color have somebody, young black girls or just young black kids in general, have a hero that looks like them, and they'll see that in the half helmet. And so basically Brainy's like, listen, girl, I've been waiting. He says he's been waiting a long time for this, and pulls up a bunch of designs for her suit. Kelly desperately asks Brainy if the 31st century is better, and he says it's like slightly better, but it's not fixed, and it's probably never going to be fixed. And Brainy says, though, that they never had Kelly as Guardian, which he's kind of implying that maybe her stepping into this role will change the future for the better. And then he looks at his Legion ring, and he looks at Kelly, and he says, what do you think about something flashy? So iconic. And I love that he, like, the gold was inspired by his Legion ring, because it's just like it all kind of comes back to this group and him and Kara and like everything. I love it. So in the Heights, Rankin pulls up, and we get finally the Guardian suit reveal. And she looks incredible. It looks so good on screen. It just, it looked great in pictures, obviously. It was so wonderful to see all of these, especially the set pictures that have come out from this episode and from episodes, in the future that will show up, and we already have set pictures from them. But it looks wonderful on screen. It looks so cool. And especially in the lineup with the Superfriends, I love it so much. I am a sucker for bright colored superhero costumes, and like all of these little colorful superheroes standing next to each other. So like Brainy, and he's in the purple, and then Kara's in the blue and red, and then Guardian is all gold, and then you have Sentinel with the blue, and Nia with the blue. Everybody's in blue anyway. I love it. They all look so good. So then Kelly says, you're not gonna hurt this city anymore. And Rankin actually releases this energy blast that starts to crumble the neighborhood, and the Super Friends all spread out to stop the collapse. Kara grabs Rankin and flies off, and Brainy gives Kelly the energy device. So in the hospital, Guardian approaches Orlando and says that Kelly sent her to help him. Very much Kara Danvers sent me, Also, listen, I don't know, did anyone notice if that was a voice modulator or if that was just Azie like lowering her voice? Because either way, somebody get this woman a voice modulator. She shouldn't have to like lower the pitch of her voice. It's me, Kelly Olsen sent me. Like, get this woman a voice modulator, Brainy. But then Orlando's basically like, hey, why should I trust you? Why should I have trust in superheroes when Supergirl didn't do shit for me, all day today? And Kelly basically says, like, you shouldn't. Let me prove it to you. Let me prove my dedication to you, and then you could decide to trust me, because you shouldn't just have blind faith in me, because, I need to be able to prove myself as a hero to you. So meanwhile, Kara continues to just beat the utter shit out of this woman, who actually ends up healing every time Kara throws a punch, so obviously she's draining more energy from these people. And on the roof, Guardian stands high above all the patients that Orlando brought out to the street, and Guardian watches as Kara gets taken down by this lady, and before she could throw a punch at her, she activates the device on her shield and starts to drain Councilwoman Rankin of her energy. So Kara then gets up and like holds her there and makes sure she can't get away, and then she says, this power doesn't belong to you. And Kelly then again is able to redirect the energy to the people, and Kara basically just lets her drop like a sack of potatoes. It's so funny. So Guardian comes down from the roof and is fully applauded by the patients. Kara says that the people will heal, and then she flies away. Brainy leaves, but before he does, he says, remember, always eat your vegetables. But and then Nia literally grabs his arm and yanks him away. And he says, what? It's true. Obviously, the Super Friends all kind of skedaddle so that Guardian can have her moment. And Orlando thanks Guardian, but the show, and it's kind of interesting because the show kind of teases that he'll probably become a council member for the Heights after Rankin was arrested, which is really wonderful. So then a little girl grabs a trash can lid as a shield, and she says, I'm Guardian. And then we also have little Esme in the corner. I love her so much. She's on screen for like half a second in this episode, but she looks so cute. So at the tower, Kelly is reflecting on the day when Dig approaches her and congratulates her. He tells her James would be proud, and then he quotes Jefferson Pierce, Black Lightning. He says, don't be a hero to the people, be a hero for the people. So Kara enters and apologizes again. Kelly says now more than ever, it is time to fight oppression and injustice. And Kara says that she will do better, taking Kelly's advice from earlier. But Kelly also says that Kara fights supervillains. Like, that's what she does. And fighting for justice is Kelly's fight. But she says, I can't do it alone. And then Kara says, neither can I. And it's just circling back to that point about blind spots and helping each other see what they can and working to fill in the blanks together. And I just love that so much. So in the training room, Brainy asks if Dig is already headed back to Metropolis, and he says, yeah, he is. But before he leaves, he says, worlds await. Which means he's going to become a Green Lantern, and I hope that, I know that HBO Max is doing a Lantern show, and I doubt he'll show up in it, but it would be so cool if he did. I would love it if he showed up in that Lantern show. It'd be so cool. It'd be so cool. So with Nixley, apparently the release of all that fifth-dimensional energy inspired the Crystal to tell them where the Courage Totem was, and she says that they have some planning to do, just like an evil villain would. So with Lena, she actually arrives at her apartment to find the magic book Florence tried to give her on the way out. It was sent through the mail. How long did it take Lena to get back from Newfoundland? How did that possibly get there before she did? I'm convinced that Florence sent it via carrier pigeon or just something ridiculous, something magical. She sent it through the magical grapevine or whatever. Anyway, so at Danson's house, Kelly unwinds from the day by wrapping her hair, and she's also wearing a Say Her Name shirt. And she sits down, lights a candle, and she grabs her journal to write when Alex comes in. She says, I might not understand, and I understand that I might not fully ever. Alex says that she wants to be her ally in every way, and Kelly says that she feels like she has no control over her emotions right now, and she says, I can't process it all right now. And Alex is like, how do I support you? And Kelly says, just let me be. Don't push me to unpack it all, to be communicated for you, and just love me. And she says, without having to understand all of me and all my experiences, and she says, just hold me. And Alex does. And it's just that moment between the two of them was so important, because I feel like that's something that really isn't addressed in interracial relationships on TV, or at least maybe not what I've seen from the CW. It's mostly the shows that I watch. Is the magnitude of differences in the experiences and how you can support your partner even if they're a different race from you and have different experiences. And I just really love that they had that dialogue on Supergirl, and it was able to strengthen their relationship to have this misunderstanding, but then come together in the end, and Alex saying, look, I just want to be the best ally I can for you. And Kelly says, I'm not going to be able to explain this to you. You just have to understand that you'll never understand, and just support me, and then when I'm ready to talk about it, we can, and I trust you and you trust me. And I just really loved that moment, and it was so raw and real and beautiful, and Azie and Kyler did such wonderful jobs in that moment. And I think I read somewhere too that Azie said that it was kind of for the two of them, it was almost like they were talking to each other, not necessarily as Alex and Kelly, but just kind of like as Kyler wanting to support Azie in the right way and in the way that she wants to. And I really appreciated that. It was so cool. And I just love that we're able to end on this really human moment between Alex and Kelly, with the focus being on Kelly finally just like letting out her tears and her emotions, and Alex just supporting her in that way that she can, just holding her. It was beautiful. And that's it. That was such a, oh my God, it was such a good episode. I mean, like I said, it just felt like a love letter to Supergirl. It felt like a love letter to Kelly. It felt like a love letter to the fans. It felt like everything that Azie, all the love that Azie has in her heart, she put on the page, and then it was transferred to the screen, and I'm just obsessed. It was so good. It was wonderful. It was so good. And if you can, please go on the CW app, watch the episode again. If you've already seen it once, watch it again. If you've seen it twice, watch it a third time. Just put it on and show the CW that this episode was really important and really wonderful, and show that there's a demand for Guardian, because who knows, who knows what might happen in the future. I think it's just really important that we come out and support Kelly and Azie in this way, and watching on the CW app, it helps with the live +7 ratings. So it's like the live viewership plus viewership 7 days after the live viewership. So if you watch it before next Tuesday, it will contribute and it'll be wonderful, and you'll do Kelly and Azie a massive, massive favor, and it would be great. And if you're outside of the US, if you're listening outside the US, you can actually go on the CW website if you have a little VPN on to change your location, and you can watch it there and it'll count the same. Or if you watch Supergirl somewhere like Canada where it goes on Netflix, it's the same thing. It counts if you watch it on Netflix. So yeah, that was it. I really loved this episode. Like I said, I think Azie did such a brilliant job. She's so talented and she's so amazing, and I cannot wait to see her write some more. I think she teased kind of in a live or in a question, I can't remember, but she teased that she would be writing again. So I'm really excited to see that. I'm so excited to just continue to support her and everything she does. She's so wonderful. She's so sweet. She's such a sweetheart. And yeah. Oh, and also we got a promo. It was kind of ridiculous. We're back to after this extremely like heavy and heartfelt episode, we're back to like goofs. So they're dealing with like the totem of courage, and it gives everybody too much courage, which is gonna be really funny because cocky Superfriends is exactly what I want. And also Lena's back, so that'll be really wonderful. There's a lot to look forward to, I think, in these coming episodes, the last couple episodes of Supergirl, so definitely be sure to keep watching, I guess. If you enjoyed this episode, let me know. Let me know what you thought about Azie's writing debut. What did you think about Guardian, about these storylines, about everything? You can leave me a comment in the comments below, or you could tweet me at televisedpod. Let me know what you think. You can rate, like, share, subscribe, do all the things, and I will see you guys next week. Bye.